For those who are logged on already, can you hear me okay? All right, thank you, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes here. Hi, Amy. Thanks for logging in. Hey, Chris. Chris, I've got an awesome desk here, courtesy of your lumber shop that I'm working on right now. Make sure it gets you a shot of it later. Hey, Jim. All right, I think we'll get started for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for logging in. If you've been to one of these before, you know how this works. But if not, just a quick run through. Type your questions into the chat box, and we'll try and answer them as they come through. Sometimes there's multiple questions. A question, then my answer, and then a little bit later another question on that same key. So I'll try and go back and find those. If you find that I haven't gone back and answered that, just type in a new question to follow up and just ask me to scroll down the screen to find that comment again. So any questions off the bat that I can start answering? Did have a couple of questions emailed to me, so I'll try and look those up here a second. Becky, who I think Becky is on tonight. Becky had asked about a four-way stop at Highway 17 in the Klondike. That's certainly a well-known intersection to anybody from Lenox and anybody in the area. I don't know that we've had any accidents there. I mean, we've certainly had some vehicles in the ditch there this year. Two yesterday. I had to run to Sioux Falls early yesterday, and there are already a couple in the ditch there. But Becky was asking about making that a four-way stop, and it is a county road. I think the county has jurisdiction on both highways there. It is something that we can certainly bring up, but it's really something that needs to be brought up with the Lincoln County Commission. I think I'm supposed to be down there next week again at the courthouse. So if I see the highway superintendent, I'll bring it up again, see what actually has to happen there. But I'm guessing it's something along the lines of like a petition process asking for some sort of improvement. The speed limit change up there, I think, came about due to the fact that we're going to have more traffic with the 4-H fairgrounds being there and the new buildings that are going on. But once you get further north, it's still certainly plenty dangerous, especially that intersection. We have accidents there all the time, and certainly something worth discussing. So I'll see if I can't find something a little more definitive for how that's supposed to happen when we want to make some sort of change on a road that's not under our jurisdiction. And yeah, one more thing that there's a lot as we continue to grow, there's going to be more and more traffic there. That's a very busy intersection even now. So one of the other questions asked is if there's a way to have Lennox divided into zones or districts for plowing. And this is having to do with off-street parking, if we call it snow alerts. Basically, if zone 1 is going to be plowed between this time and this time. Yeah, we do have zones. They're not super definitive, but if our first when we come out for our snow removal, while the snow is still happening, basically once we hit a couple inches, we're going to be out taking care of emergency routes. That's the main priority right away. And then as the snow begins to taper off, then we start getting into those residential areas. And so what you'll see is we'll have one vehicle working on the north side of town, basically north of First Avenue, north of the railroad tracks, that area. Another vehicle working the east side of town, so east of Main generally, and then another working west and southwest. And so it's not that we don't have zones, and they're all being worked on at the same time. So it's not that we've got all three vehicles in this area at one time, and then they move on to this area. They work relatively independently to clean their areas of the town up. So in terms of snow alerts and where people park during snow alerts, I think early winter, if we were to have a snow alert, we're not going to make a big deal about somebody parking on the grass or on their lawn while there's a snow alert ongoing and they don't have any other options. We get that may be somebody's only option, and if we're forcing them off the street so that we can make snow removal happen, we're not gonna make a big deal out of that. Now, after the snow alert's done, still plenty of parking on the street. We're gonna want folks to move back off the lawn so that they're in compliance with local ordinances. So. But outside of that, there's just not a whole lot available if you don't have off-street parking. We always mention that there's ample parking available in the city park over by the park shop. Now that being said, that's one of the last places to get plowed. So if we were to get a foot of snow and you're parked over there, it might be a long time before that car is able to move. Outside of that, there's really not a whole lot of areas available where someone would be able to park. Jesse says, I'd love to see the intersection in front of my house have stop signs. Yeah, Jesse, mentioning how fast people are going over there. I swear I saw somebody going past there about 40, 50 miles an hour last weekend. Hard to believe. I think, and this as well as anybody, that intersection used to be a bit of a natural speed bump, and it wouldn't slow everybody down, but I think anybody who had been over it once or twice would know that they want to slow down when they come to that intersection. Since the Boynton Avenue project has done that intersection, it's a lot easier to get through. It's certainly something we can look at as a main route through town. We generally don't do a ton of stop signs on them, but maybe it's one of those things where we just need to take a look at what the traffic is like, what the speeds are. We do have a traffic counter that monitors speeds and axles, so we can see if trucks are going over it as well. But we really can't do that until the spring thaw is done. So certainly something we can look at. Some talk about turning lanes. Yep, certainly an option. Yeah, Jesse, this guy was really moving. I don't know if you were around, but he was. I'm not sure who it was, but they were booking it. Yeah, I'm not used to seeing people go that fast in town without lights and sirens. So, Chris, still working on getting the Lennox Lumber Company closer to town. Yes, absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Chris has Southeast South Dakota Rough Sawn Lumber north of town, just onto the Parker shortcut. We'd love to have him here in town and are working on making that happen right now. So hopefully we can see this lumber yard, lumber company here in town here shortly. I'd like to see them here this year if possible. So if you haven't had a chance to check Chris's business out, please do. For those of you who are logged on a little bit later, Chris was on earlier. I mentioned that the desk I'm working on right now was built with lumber from his shop there. So we did a epoxy river desk and got all the supplies from Chris. They do great work. It's great wood. I'm probably never doing it again, but I had fun while it lasted. Any other questions? I thought I saw a comment from somebody with Nielsen Construction, but I'm not seeing it. There it is. Signage compliance for off-street signage and countryside edition. So, it's hard to explain. So I'm sure I apologize. I might not be pronouncing your name correctly, but when it comes to signage in residential zone for countryside, generally if you've got a for sale sign from house to home or something like that, you're generally not going to see much of an issue there. That's generally no problem. But if you've got larger commercial signs, that's something we generally have to take a look at. So I haven't seen anything lately that would cause me any concern in here. So I think everything's going well there. Yeah, if you want to reach out, my email address is on the website. Shoot me a message through Facebook, either one. And we can try and figure out if there's any specific questions you might have that I can help answer there. All right, thank you. Glad I got the pronunciation right. I often get I know what it's like to have your name mispronounced every once in a while. So, yeah, Jesse, I think what we were trying to do is get Jesse's asking about snow removal at his curb here at Juniper and Boynton, and it's really the same for everything north of him here too. Up in countryside, it's been a bit of a windy winter with a lot of snow and not a whole lot of stuff to stop it. So, Jesse, the plan right now is once we can and once we have available staff, is to try and get the payloader out here and try and get everything pushed back a bit again. It's been tough. We're down a couple of folks, and when we're working with 2 staff instead of 4 in that department in a tough winter, it's really tough to get all that maintenance done in between snowstorms, and then still be able to get the effective work done that we need to. So I was out a little bit last weekend working on it with the skid loader, and it's not going to do it. We're going to have to get the big loader out to try and get after some of that. So really the issue it gets to be that it's a tough winter. And as that snow piles up, those plows, they can't always get at those drifts the way they would like to when the edges of the berms on the side of the road are already 4 or 5 foot tall. So there's nowhere to go, unfortunately, except for your driveway. And I don't think you're going to like that as a possible storage space. So yeah, we're hoping to be able to get back out and work on those piles and get them pushed back a little bit further into these properties so that we have room for snow storage and we can get back to the curb again. And Jesse also mentioned he's got a hydrant over there. If you do have a hydrant by your place, folks, help out the fire department, help out the streets crews, see if you can't get out there and shovel around that. I think they asked for 3 feet around either side of fire hydrants. They did a lot of volunteer work earlier this year, and it helps every time that it happens. Every time we get the snow, it helps a lot to have folks nearby willing to take a few minutes out of their day to help clear space around a fire hydrant. We never know when that fire hydrant's going to be needed for our own homes. So certainly something to help. Josh asked if there are any provisions in place for disabled or fixed income or elderly to not suffer surcharges as badly as the rest. Not that we have, Josh. There are programs, though. I think Interlakes Action Agency, I think they have some utility assistance programs that they can help with. But there's nothing on our side. When we get these projects financed through the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources, their expectation and requirement is that it's spread across all rate users. So if someone is using, we use it as we base those rates on a usage. So as you use more water, you pay more. No different than like with Mid-American or Excel or any others. So, but if someone's having help or having a hard time paying those bills, we generally refer them over to Interlakes. Chris asked, any news on the senior center? Yeah, Chris, this week the senior center was transferred over to the Lennox Area Development Corporation. And once that is recorded, I haven't got word yet, but it should have happened today or tomorrow. Then the process to turn it over to this restaurant starts, and that they're supposed to take possession on March 1st is the date for them. So a couple of weeks from now, that should be in their hands. We've got to get everything moved out of there yet, and that's supposed to happen next week. So my hope is sometime this summer we'll have this restaurant open. Jesse's bringing a skid loader this weekend to move it up there. Yeah, I wish you well, Jesse. I tried. It was a slow go, but do what you can. Just be careful, and don't get stuck in there. There is some mud back there, so don't get too deep. Christy asked who's responsible for shoveling snow at Pine and Second. Is Sunrise Manor or the city? Have had one person fall and got hurt there. We need it taken care of. Contact them. Christy, it depends. If it's the trail, then the city takes care of the trail, the recreational trail. The sidewalks are taken care of by property owners. So, I'm sure it's been a tough year to get there. So, Laura, yeah, absolutely. Thankfully we've been able to get most of those storm drains open and get water flowing to them. There's some areas I think that are having a harder time than others, given some drifting and some snowpack, but last week did a lot of good. The rain on, was it Monday or Tuesday? I think Tuesday. The rain on Tuesday did a lot of good too. So yeah, absolutely, Chris. Another good place to get food here in town. This is one of those things that showed up on our economic development surveys a couple of years ago. Continues to show up on surveys now. A good sit-down restaurant is something this community's been calling for a long time, and with any luck, we'll have one open here shortly. Amy asked, any news on when the bridge on Cleveland is going to be complete? I do have news on that. Bear with me here. I'm going to look through some emails here because it was a while back. Okay, so this is from Lincoln County. This is it's a Lincoln County project, not a city project. So the contractor is planning to open the road mid to late December, but the extreme cold and snow hit just brought them to a halt. So they're wrapped up until spring at this point. Their hope is to get it open in the spring, get out there and pave the road before it opens. So, they were planning on being open sometime this winter, even though it would have been gravel. But at this point, they're looking at spring. So, Jesse's going to be a judge of how authentic the Mexican food is. I don't know what to tell you what to expect, Jesse. I think it's going to be it's good food. I'll tell you that. I've eaten at a couple of their restaurants, and it's good stuff. So I think it may be a little Americanized, but it's solid food. Josh says there should be a circumstantial waiver if they're declined. Technically, you've paid their dues for 30 to 50 years of this town already, if that makes any sense. Not quite sure I understand what you're going at there, Josh. So if you can comment again or reply back, just a little clarification, if you could. Jim saw me driving the skid loader on Elm. Jim, I've gotten really familiar with that skid loader this year, unfortunately. But it's just got to be done. So there's work to do, and it's got to be done, and we're going to take care of it. Jesse asked what company it is. Jesse, I think you're asking about the Mexican restaurant. If not, clarify. But it's a family out of central South Dakota. So they've got restaurants in Winter and Chamberlain. And I think he's got more family with restaurants in northern Nebraska as well. I think Valentine, Chadron. I might be missing one. I think there's one more up in northwest Nebraska. So long history of providing really great restaurant service. In fact, I was driving through Winter on Friday morning at 11:30, and it was already packed. The parking lot was already packed to that one. So. I'd compare it to, there's one in Brandon. I always forget the name of it. It was honestly mentioned on the last Q&A live, and I already forgot the name. But it's very similar food to the one in Brandon. Mary has, absolutely, Mary. There are exemptions and some limits and exclusions for property tax assistance through the county. And if they're at a point where they need that kind of assistance, we would certainly encourage them to reach out to the county and ask for that help. Chris mentioned we need to support local, get these small businesses to survive. Absolutely. So folks, just because you can get it in Sioux Falls doesn't mean you have to get it in Sioux Falls. If you can get it here in town, it's amazing how much stuff you can get here in Lennox. Whether it's just last night, I needed in a hurry. I needed some fasteners for a small project here at the house. That if I didn't have them, I was going to have to wait a little too long today to get it done. And 5 to 8, they're getting ready to close up. Helped me out, got me out the door. That's a 2-minute trip for me. Instead of a 30-minute trip to Sioux Falls. So, if you can get stuff here in town, we encourage you to do so. Those sales tax dollars come back to help your city as well. Those are dollars that help for infrastructure. And honestly, we're using them more and more to help offset what we would otherwise do in surcharges. So shop local, absolutely. Josh says, asks, you said to get state help on bill. What if they say no? Josh, so Interlinks isn't a state agency. It's a nonprofit. They do get, I think they get some state money, but mostly federal dollars, if I remember right. They have income restrictions, obviously, like most programs do. If they say no, I don't know of any other programs that would help with that. Jesse asked, as far as moving snow, do we need help? Yeah, we need help. Absolutely. What we really need is some folks with CDLs. Skid loaders too certainly help, and I'm never going to turn down, folks helping. But one option we're looking at right now is some, temporary seasonal help to help get us through the winter, being about half of our labor force. So, I think it's something that it came up at the last city council meeting. I think we're going to talk about it more this next one. So it's possible that we could have some temp positions open here, just to help with winter. So. Other questions? Amy asks, I remember wanting to sell water to tea. Do we do that? And if so, how much money do we receive per month? Amy, we don't do that. We did discuss it I want to say it was last summer, maybe June, July timeframe. But we ended up not going forward with that. We asked for a few more things than what had originally been discussed. And that it just kind of fell apart from there. We just couldn't come to an agreement with T in terms of how much to deliver and what the payment would be. So. Other questions? Josh asked the question, how does it work exactly that we pay the buck for, sorry, Josh had scrolled down there on me. We pay the buck for all the city pipes. What does the city put towards the effort? Well, the city only gets money from one place. The easy answer is that all of it comes from the taxpayers. Or the ratepayers of the community. Our water and sewer funds are a business, and they run just like any other utility business, and then they have to pull in revenue to pay for their operations, and they have to pull in revenue to pay for their capital improvements and the pipes, essentially. And so how we do that here is that we get state loans and grants. In the last two projects, more grants than loans, which is great. We'd like to continue that as long as we possibly can. But as far as who pays the buck and why residents pay the buck, well, it's the residents that are using it. The city doesn't have money of its own to spend. It's all coming from taxpayers. Chris asked, the road from 17 to middle school elementary is in the repair list. Not right now, Chris. I don't think it's on the capital improvement plan. I think you're asking about Fifth Avenue. The one thing that we would really like to see happen over there is to get some curb and gutter, especially on the south side of the road where there's currently none. I think I want to say it's almost everything east of Ash Street. So right now there's no plan to repair anything on Fifth. If there's a specific spot though, like you're seeing a pothole or an area that really just needs to be put back together, we can add it to our spring list where our patch list for the summer, where our crew takes tons of asphalt every year, and I hesitate to say how many tons it was last year, but I want to say it was north of 300 tons that they laid patching certain spots in town. Maya asked, any improvements need to be made to this Legion Hall for the seniors? Yes. So there are some improvements that we'll be making there. I think probably the first and most important one is an automatic door for disability access. We're going to make some improvements to the parking, so we have a couple more handicap accessible spots. Let me think what else we got to do here. The sidewalk and pedestrian ramp from the street, we want to make that a little better. And I want to say that's it. Some minor things inside. You got to add a phone, probably a dishwasher, a couple other things. But overall, pretty manageable stuff. Unfortunately, all that outside stuff really can't be done until spring. And hopefully we can get a contractor able to do it as soon as possible. So Josh says, if I put $1,500 per year for my property taxes plus the grant money, it's not possible the city puts zero. Josh, I'm not really sure what you're asking there. So your property tax, maybe part of this is understanding what pays for what with your property taxes, your utility bills, so on and so forth. So the city has several funds. I want to say probably close to 12 different funds that money is in. 4 of those are what we would call major funds. The first and primary one is the general fund. So the general fund is made up primarily of your property taxes and sales taxes, as well as a number of different fees like building permit fees, parking fines. There's some state pass-through money that the counties get and then send back to us, like the wheel tax. The cities get a share of that. Campground fees, those kinds of things. So there's just all the stuff that it takes to run the city. That all goes into the general fund. And so what that general fund pays for is everything that happens at City Hall. It pays for materials and equipment and staff for the library, streets department, what else? Building inspection, code enforcement, all that stuff that's really just, this is what City Hall does. And that's what the general fund pays for. It pays for keeping everything running, all the general stuff. The next biggest fund is probably the water or sewer fund. So those are the big ones. These are the two that are run just like any other utility, where they have to pull in money to operate the system, but also make improvements on the system. So when Excel needs a new transmission line, they're going to add fees or to a surcharge on your bill. It's no different than that. So those funds that you pay, when you pay your water and sewer bill every month, they're paying for the water that we purchase from Lewis and Clark. It's paying for our staff in the water department. So it'll be our wastewater, our utility superintendent, a portion of the finance officer, billing clerk, that kind of stuff. Materials, supplies for the plant, for testing, for the lab, so on and so forth. And then those surcharges pay for the system improvements. So when we're putting new sewer mains in the ground or new water mains in the ground, that's what those surcharges are going back to pay for. So, and then the last fund is the second penny fund or sales tax fund, and that's just money straight from the sales tax comes down to the city based on what you guys buy, what we all buy in town. So if we were to one of the questions I've heard in the past is, if we were to take, why don't we take money from the general fund and pay for the projects that way? Or why don't we, why can't we just cross it over? The main reason we don't do that, and there's more than one, but the main reason we don't do that is because it wouldn't be effective. If we were to do, let's say we take 50% of the general fund and dedicate that towards a utility project, towards Central Basin 4, for example. Well, that 50% out of the general fund means that we're going to have probably half the police force cut. We wouldn't have a full-time police department anymore. We'd lose other services that would, there's no other way to say it other than that they'd be called non-essential, like library or museum, or those other quality of life issue, parts of our city government that are really important to the community, but don't provide public safety or public health benefit, right? Not that they're not important, they're just not essential to community health and safety. So when you do that, you're pulling out of all these, what I would call pretty key programs, and putting money into these other projects instead. And it's not making a dent. You could do that we could cut that, we could dedicate half of our general fund for 10 years and still not be able to afford the project that we have next year, or this year, I should say, a $10 million project. It's just not going to make a dent. And by the time we get to that 10-year point, that $10 million project has now exploded in price to $15 million. And so you're even if you had enough saved up by that time, you're still not going to be able to do it because the cost has changed so much that you're just behind all the time. So, as on the opposite side of that, if you're to borrow it at a very low interest rate for 30 years, you can manage that debt load and not really impact the operation so much. I hope I've explained that as easily as I can. If I missed something, or if you have a follow-up, feel free to comment in, and I'll try and answer that too. Amy, why is the sidewalk not open where the old water plant was? Amy, I think it's actually gone right now. I'll have to follow up on that. But when we tore it down, I think they may have taken some of that out. But I'll follow up on it. If it's still there, then we'll get it open. It should be. Thanks, Mitch. Mitch Masick used to work for us. I think Mitch was here when I first started. He's no longer with us. He decided that Minnesota had a better calling for some reason. May have had something to do with ice hockey. But Mitch, we still have 2 positions open. No pressure. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Amy. If somebody could is the video okay? Every once in a while I'll get a pop-up that it's loading slowly or that it's dropping. Has the video been okay tonight? Amy asked about the approximate start date for the Summer Street project. We'll hope for May. Thanks, Maya and Becky. Thank you. Good to hear. I was worried that maybe it was lagging or something there. So, but yeah. So this summer's Central Basin 4 project, Amy, we're hoping to kick off in May. We'll authorize bids at this coming, or we'll ask the council to authorize bids at this coming city council meeting on the 27th. And open bids on the 24th. So with any luck, we'll be able to get this thing kicked off in May and get moving on schedule. We'd like to end on time, just like we did with Boynton and South Main last year. A lot of that's going to depend on the weather. And I'm just not going to jinx it. I'm not going to say anything I'm not going to make any predictions about the weather for this year. I'm just going to leave it at that. Josh asked overall plans for east of 17, how and why? Josh, I'm going to ask for some clarification on that. If you could give me some more information on what you're looking for there. What kinds of information you'd like, or what kinds of plans you're wondering about. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. We may be reaching out. Jim asked where is Central Basin 4 located. Jim, glad you asked. Let's see if I can get a good picture here for you. We just got the plans this week, so plans for review, and I don't know if that's going to show up very well. Sorry, trying to do this backwards, it's not working very well. So what you're seeing there is Elm Street from 4th Avenue North up to Boynton, Academy from 3rd or 4th to 1st, as well as 3rd Avenue. And then we'll have Rummel Circle, and Cedar as well in there. So big project, scheduled to be a 2-year project. We'll see what the contractors want to do. It's possible we get someone in there that wants to take care of all of it in 1 year, which would be great. But it's a big project. So stay tuned in terms of phases and what's going to be closed when and where, and so on and so forth. So. Josh asks about 2040 bike path along creek. Josh, I'm guessing here, but I think you're referring to the comprehensive plan, which does have a master trails plan, I think, in there as well. That master trails plan was, that was developed probably 12, 15 years ago, I suppose. So there's no bike path that would go along there. Ideally, any area that's got floodplain, cities generally want to see, eventual use of that floodplain for green space. And a lot of places will put nature trails along those. They have to acquire the land, of course, and go through that process of either buying or getting easements. But at some point it'd be nice to have all those, but we've got enough trails to work on at this point with extending Boynton last year, and hopefully getting some more done relatively soon. So in terms of 2nd and 4th to run through, I don't know of anything at this point, Josh, that would take 2nd and 4th east of Highway 17. None of that's some of it's in city limits, but not at that location. So there's no plans at this point to do anything. Thanks, Chris. I may be calling on you if you have a slow day. Christy asked when the Christmas lights, sometimes I have to scroll back up and find if there's a new comment that comes in, it automatically goes down. So my apologies, folks, but I gotta go back and find this one. When are the Christmas lights on Pine going to be turned off? Christy, probably relatively soon. We're really getting to the point where we're kind of caught up on getting equipment maintained. We want to get everything in shape for next week when we're supposed to get yet another snow. But I would hope that we could be able to do that early next week if possible. So I'll follow up with the streets crew and see if that's possible. Kaylee asked about when Rummel Circle will be done. Hard to say, Kaylee. Like I said earlier, it's kind of planned to be a 2-year project, but it could be a 1-year. Either way, it'll be the latter part of that project. I think it'll be one of the last phases. to happen. So, if it's all this year, it would probably be, I'm guessing here, September, October timeframe. If it's next year, probably midsummer, something like that. And then wondering, because I'd like at the very least get the bushes that grow there. Yeah, Kaylee, if you want to get those shrubs out of there before we come through, I think that's a good idea. If you've got another spot you want to put them, because when we come through and do this, anything that's in the right of way is generally coming out, and it's going to be destroyed. So if you think you can get some of those out of there to save those, I know I would. I'd go through there beforehand. So if you don't mind, just follow up in, I'd say 3 months, 2 to 3 months, and see where we're at. We should have a contractor schedule sort of established by then to see what they're planning, and we'll have a better idea of when they're planning to be in that area. So if you want to do them earlier, feel free. But if you want to get them through a growing season, and if there's time until next year, I don't see any reason why not. Good question. Thanks, Josh. Josh asked why Lynn Heining on 17 and 44 was bought, what the plan is. Josh, we've gone over this a few times, but the plan there is future commercial industrial. But you'll know the comment below from Chris that sale is pending there. The city transferred that land over to the Lennox Area Development Corporation a couple months back, and they've got a purchase agreement on the property to have a business come through. So I won't disclose exactly what that business is, but there's work happening there, and with any luck, we'll have something here in the near future. We're hoping to have that land annexed here at the next city council meeting as well. So adding it into the city limits, and that way any commercial or industrial development that does happen there can come through and help benefit the city's funds. Welcome, Kaylee. Josh asked butcher. Nope, not a butcher. I'll say that. We have, anybody who's been paying attention to the planning and zoning meeting last month knows that we've been looking at possible change in our zoning ordinances to allow butcher shops in the commercial zones, so central or general business districts. So we're talking small operations here, nothing that would allow anything outside. A few head a day really is it. So there's been some interest in that in the last year or two. And we'd like to find a way to make something like that happen, but also in a way that respects community and neighborhood standards. We don't want, I don't want a ton of truck traffic, for example, on Main Street, downtown Main Street. So I haven't heard anything about any talk of a livestock operation. We had a couple of years ago, Josh, there was a processing company that wanted to locate on the south end of town, but I haven't heard anything like that since. That was probably a 50 head a day operation if I remember right. So this would be significantly smaller. We're talking a really a community butcher shop where you can get fresh meat and hopefully do some wild game processing as well. Yeah, absolutely. Lee's, something like Lee's. I think this place is going to do more. There's multiples. So some of them would do wild game processing. Some of them will do your beef and pork and everything else. So anybody that's had a beef done lately or a hog is pretty familiar with the waiting list. I think we will be waiting quite a while around here. I know Canton, Hudson, really all of them are all, they got a long waiting list to get any of that done. So there's certainly a lot of demand in the region to have this kind of processing. Any other questions? Yeah, absolutely. Maya, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right as well. A local butcher is just one of those things that a lot of us grew up with, in small towns, and I think it just adds a lot of value to a small town. I think it can be an addition that attracts people to a town, a kind of a destination shop. I know, there've been a couple of times where I've been in the area by Hartford and stopped by the new Creekside Meats place up there. They're not doing on-site kill there, but they're doing all their processing there, and it's just a really cool shop. And people come from all over to that. No different than any other draw. So, Amy asked, "What can be done to get a crosswalk light put on Highway 44 for students to cross, similar to what's in place by the elementary?" Yeah, that's a tough intersection, Amy. I didn't. My son is in 7th grade now, so I haven't gone down there that much until this year. I mean, I've been down there a lot, but it seems I'm down there a lot more with a kid in school down there, and it's a bit of a mad rush in the morning. I want to say there's been a discussion. Now, I'll have to follow up on this, but I think there's already been a discussion with DOT about what we can put in there, and I want to say. Oh gosh, this is really testing my memory, Amy. I think we got a grant from the Highway Public Safety Office to get either some lights or some radar installed there. I'll follow up with Chief Erickson to make sure, but I want to say that was something that he was working on, and I want to say there's also a conversation with DOT happening about getting a little bit of a safer crossing there. So. I'll try and follow up on it. Probably won't be tomorrow, Amy, but if I can follow up next week, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, Renner Market, very similar, or Renner Locker, excuse me, very similar, Josh. Do great work. I've never actually been there. I just had a lot of their the meats that they make. So I think their deer sticks are out of this world, quite honestly. Other questions? Amy asked, "What is the drainage problem in the meadows? Do we have storm sewer drains out there?" Yeah, it's I'm not so sure that there's a storm drain issue, though. I mean, if you've been down there, Amy, during a heavy thunderstorm, there are some slower drains there. So I have some concerns there that it is not draining as much as it should. But the main thing we're looking at here, bear with me here. I'm going to go to my map, make sure I get the street names right. So the intersection at Poplar Drive and Prairie Drive, it's a T intersection there. And if you go through there, it really any time of the year, you're going to notice standing water. I'm not entirely sure what the main culprit is there. It could have sunk. We could have had some settling. But either way, it just sits there. So it's a relatively small area, so a fairly easy fix. I'd consider it very similar to what happens on South Elm. I was going to say when it rains, but it's really all the time. If there's sump pumps running on South Elm, anybody that goes down there across from Second Reform is going to see the same problem. There's just no slope and no way for that water to go out. So what we're hoping to do is a small fix there this year, fixing that valley gutter if nothing else. And try and get that positive flow down to those storm drains and then out of town where we don't have to worry about it. So yeah, if you go down there, you'll probably see a bunch of ice down there right now, Amy. But maybe Saturday or Sunday after we have a little bit more melt, if you head down to Prairie and Poplar, you'll see what I'm talking about there. It's been a problem for a long time. It's really starting to eat away at the street. And our concern is that it's going to continue building and making the problem worse and worse. So There's also a problem further west down Poplar that we're really not sure what's causing it yet. But every spring there's a significant heave that happens on that street there, to the point that it's kind of a traffic safety concern. So just one of those things we want to look at and monitor. If there is a quick fix to that, we'll try and take care of it. But the Meadows one is it's a drainage problem. It's not necessarily a storm sewer problem. So. If anybody's interested, now I should put this into our comment box here quick if I can. The city does have their own GIS system, so if you're ever interested in looking at all kinds of information, so where we have our water mains, sewer mains, storm sewers. We have a street condition index on there, so if you're ever wondering where your street is graded in terms of A, B, C, or D, in terms of quality, you'll see it on here. Truth be told, there's a 50-50 chance it's graded at C or worse, and so that's one of those things we're working at with these projects is getting us to a point where we're really making progress with street conditions as well as underground utilities. So I'll see if I can get that posted in here a second. Yeah, so if you go to that link, folks, that'll take you, well, that's unfortunate. It says error item does not exist or is inaccessible. Let's see here. Well, the good news, folks, is that if you do click that link, I was able to pull it up again in a new window. So it may say does not exist or there's an error, but I was able to pull it up. So give it a shot. You should be able to pull that up. You can also link to the city's webpage from there. Stockwell, you can link to their city engineer, and Lincoln County GIS. And Lincoln County GIS has a little bit more detailed info, especially when you get into the flood layers. You can see what areas in town tend to pond a lot, what areas are actually in the floodplain, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information on there. You can see which streets were done when for slurry seal. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here, folks. I always hesitate to do this because I feel like I'm going to unintentionally end the live feed. Yeah, I don't see it. Well, if anybody's been on a GIS system, they'll see this and know exactly what they're looking at. But if you go, the menu on the left-hand side, you got 3 boxes stacked on top of each other. That's where you're going to see the different layers, and you can choose in there what you want to see. Whether you want to see where the slurry seal's been done, where we have our issues map in there, and that's something that we just add to from time to time. So pretty cool. I honestly don't think this tab ever closes on my computer. It's constantly open. We get calls from developers, builders, wondering where the water mains are, where the nearest sewer is, so on and so forth. It's a great tool. Looks like it worked for a number of people here. Stacy, Verla, great, thank you. Drew, awesome, good. Not sure what that error is about, but hey, the link works, so let's use it, right? Josh asked, so the city owns the pipes? Yes, the city owns all the utilities in town, all the water and sewer utilities and storm sewer. Middle of the road, we pay, them pay more. Seems something should be in the budget. So here's how the budget generally works. So repairs and maintenance come out of operations, and that's the stuff you just pay. When we're fixing a street, when our street crew is out there fixing a street, that's coming out of your property taxes and sales taxes. That's not coming out of necessarily the drainage fund. It's usually not coming out of any of the other funds. That's just the work that has to happen and the stuff you pay taxes for. When it comes to long-term capital improvement, that's not something that communities really put in their operating budget because it's not operating funds. And it's just not something we would even be close to being able to do. We've got a $2 million general fund. That might be a little bit generous, probably closer to $1.8 million general fund. About half of that is public safety. Outside of that, it's just keeping everything running. We run fairly lean. We don't have a whole lot of staff overall. So once you start talking about moving that money over from that budget, you're talking about cutting services. And at some point that ends up being very harmful to the community. So it is something we budget for. We budget for these improvements, these projects, but we do that in a capital improvement plan. So we look at what we have available in these funds and try and use cash if available. And you look at what you're going to have available and you guess basically what stuff is going to be available, what funds are going to be available 3, 5, 10 years into the future. Now, the further out you get, of course, it's more and more of a guessing game. You're basing your projections on long-term economic trends. So it's not like it's not that we don't budget for these improvements. We do. It's just not done in an operating budget. It's done with a capital improvement plan. And those are generally funded through grants and loans. At least so futures don't have to kick the can after 2052. And then I'm not sure what you mean with the kicking the can after 2052, Josh. So if you can clarify that, that would help. And then budget for sewer and drainage. Sewer's operating budget is probably around. Well, the total budget for sewer is probably around maybe $600,000. I'd have to go back and check. Now that includes all the surcharges coming in for revenue and going out for expense. So not all of that is here's what it costs to run everything. That's also capital improvement. Josh asked 700 extra on top for maintenance and sewer. I'm just trying to understand. 1,500 to school, 1,500 to city, another 700 to sewer and maintain. Why are our funds not being allocated? Josh, I'm guessing here. I'll probably need you to clarify, but I'm guessing you're saying the 1,500 to school and city is your property taxes. I'm not sure where you're getting the 700 from. And funds are being allocated. They're being budgeted where they need to be. If anybody's wanting to look through our budget, we do have it available. It's a city ordinance, so it's available. I'll be the first to admit those budgets are not the easiest to read. So if you run into something, feel free to shoot us a question, and we'll try to explain as best we can. Amy says before Meadows was developed, it was always very wet out there. Yeah, I obviously wasn't here at that point, Amy, but I've heard the same that it's kind of a low pasture out there. And there's a lot of I think there's a lot of sump pumps that run out there too, even in dry years. Jim, how much would it be to get snow gates for the plows or graders for the city? But Jim, I don't think we've ever actually, at least I haven't actually looked at what that would cost. I could look at what it costs Sioux Falls. I have looked at what it costs Sioux Falls to do it overall, and that's, the Sioux Falls did a study shortly after they started using snow gates, and it made the plowing something like 30% more inefficient. I'll see if I can find that and put that in the comments. So that's what worries me, is that would really slow us down to do that. It certainly has a nice benefit for those of us with driveways. I'm just like the next guy. I hate clearing that driveway out again for the second or third time after the plow goes by. But there's outside of snow gates, there's really no way to avoid that. But Jim, I'll see if I can find some information on those and post those back in the comments, if that's okay. So Josh, if we don't put a solid budget in place, our kids will have the same problem we do in 30 years. Yeah, absolutely, Josh. That's why we're doing what we're doing. If we don't start taking care of these problems now, this is going to be a problem for everybody. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to get to the point where things have degraded to the point so poorly that we can't do anything about it anymore. So, that's why we're in each year's budget we have sewer spot repairs, for example, built into our budget in the sewer fund, where we're trying to take care of 4 or 5 spots every year where the sewer is bad. We've got a bad spot of sewer, a bad section, but it's not bad enough to justify replacing the whole thing. So we'll go in, fix that one spot, and leave the rest of the street as is, because outside of that, there's nothing wrong with it. So, but that's exactly what we're doing. Why we're doing what we're doing with this capital improvement plan. We don't want to get 30 years down the road and be in the same predicament we're in now, where we've got decades of work to do, and it's only going to get more expensive. So the sooner we take care of this, the cheaper it's going to be, and the more effectively we can make it happen. So with the 700 on the bottom of your statement, sounds like that 700 is at the bottom of your tax statement, Josh, on maintenance and drainage. Yeah, so the maintenance fee you pay there is that frontage fee. You pay $1 per foot. Every residential property in town pays it. Every business, not the churches, not the schools. I think that's it. And so that $700 goes toward the slurry seal projects every year. That's building up this fund. Remember the number of it, Fund 220 is a street maintenance fund. And the only thing that fund is used for is, right now, slurry seals. Eventually, we'll come to a point where it needs to be used for mill and overlay projects as well. So, let's say 20 to 30 years down the road, South Main Street, which was done in 2017, is going to need it'll need an upgrade. It'll need to do a mill and overlay project to replace that top lift of asphalt. That's what that fund will be used for at that time as well. But right now, it's really just funding the slurry seal projects. And then the drainage fund funds drainage improvements, but primarily funds the South Main Street project that I was just talking about. So that one is a bit of an outlier. I wasn't around when this was done, so I don't know what the rationale was or what the discussion was like. But when they did South Main Street from Highway 44 up to, I want to say it was 4th Avenue, if I remember right, that was done. It was borrowed, but it was borrowed against the drainage fund. And so your drainage fund, what you pay in that drainage fee, part of that goes into the fund to fund general maintenance and improvements of the drainage system. But I think the bulk of it probably goes towards that debt service on the South Main project. Linda asked if Iding property is annexed, will city water and sewer be extended, and who will pay for that? There's no plan to do it at this time, Linda. If the new owner wants to have water and sewer extended out there right away, we would probably have to come to some sort of agreement on that. But right now, there's no plan to do so. They'll stay on rural water, probably have a septic for the time being, and we'll go from there. So now there's ongoing conversations, though, about industrial expansion to the south of town. And so, I would assume that, should that happen, we'll be extending water and sewer to that location. So, Josh says snow gates aren't effective here. Just to clarify, we don't have snow gates right now. I assume they're effective in Sioux Falls, but I don't know. I've not seen them. But again, it's just one of those things we don't have here yet. Amy asked, what are the ages of city-sponsored softball and baseball teams? Oh, gosh. Okay, here goes. Softball, 8U, 10U, 12U. There might be a 14U, Amy. I'm not positive. And baseball is 8U, 10U, 12U. And then last year, Legion took over, Legion Baseball took over 14U. And of course, they have Junior Legion and Senior Legion for the rest of those kids. So now, of course, we'll also have girls high school softball this year. And we do have a high school baseball team, though that's not a sanctioned sport in South Dakota, I guess. So, Amy, if I got that wrong, I'll correct it. But registration did open this week. We got registration out there. So LennoxParksandRec.com. We'll try and put the link in here later. If you've got kids that are hoping to sign up, please do. Also, we're going to have the Sand Volleyball League coming up here. So stay tuned. I think probably in the next week we're going to see registration for the adult and youth Sand Volleyball Leagues coming out. It was a ton of fun. If you didn't play last year, come join us. It was a blast. Josh, I'm going to ask you to clarify that one. So Josh asked, what's the budget going forward, 15% or 20%? I'm not sure what budget you're referring to, Josh. So if you could clarify that. Josh also asked, how is the senior center funded, fundraisers or general fund? So senior center was funded with general fund dollars. So your property tax dollars paid for the senior center to operate, building, utilities, supplies, so on and so forth. So that was all funded by property taxes out of the general fund. So property taxes and everything else. So, and will continue to be, with them being over at the Legion, they'll continue to be funded the same way. Levels of swimming lessons this year. Amy asked what levels of swimming lessons are going to be offered this year. I assume it's going to be the same as last year, Amy. We're kind of early on here in terms of discussions, so we haven't really hired any of our staff yet. We've just had some of those initial discussions of some minor operational changes to make this year. But I assume it's going to be the same levels as before. Then what ages can kids play soccer? I think it's through second grade. So up through second grade, and then I think third grade, we don't have anything above that. So kids generally end up going over to T Park and Rec for that. That's where my son played for a couple of years, and they got a great program, but we just don't have the numbers to sustain it at that age. T-ball. Hang on here, Amy. I'm going to try and find out. I want to say it's kindergarten. Okay, so there's a 6U T-ball, both a girls and a boys division for players born this says 2014 or later, but I think that's for 2022 season. So I think it's 2015 or later. So. Yeah, Josh, I'm sorry. I'm still just not understanding what question you're asking here. I mean, budget towards infrastructure is it's a really broad question. So in the streets department, for example, we would budget for asphalt and labor. We would in the street maintenance fund, we would budget for about $125,000 for slurry seal this year. So I'm just not sure what if you can narrow down your question a little bit, I can probably get you a better answer. But budget towards infrastructure is just a really broad thing. We've got a ton of stuff that fits under that, and I'm just not sure what question you're asking there. Thanks, Steve. Steve Cruz, he's on our Park and Rec board, folks. So he says, I believe you have to be 5 on June 1st. That's 6U. So thanks, Steve. Chris says Lennox, what an awesome community. Absolutely. I'm glad to be a part of it, Chris, and I'm glad you are too. Sometimes us Northwest Iowa transplants really stick it out. We've really enjoyed being out here. Josh, I'm sorry, but that's simply not the case. So what Josh is saying is what I've gathered from this exchange is the city has zero budget for sewer and drainage going forward, and anything we need to fix pipes just comes out of our grants, and then we pay for broken pipes on our water bill. But that's just not how this works. We budget every year for sewer and drainage and water. We budget long term for infrastructure fixes to fix the pipes. Some of that comes out of grants, some of it comes out of loans. When the system breaks, whether you've got broken pipes or just a degraded system, that's going to come out of the ratepayers' pockets. I mean, that it's no different than any other business. So I guess I don't know what to expect there other than that. Maya asks, any plans for road construction on North Cherry in the future? Yes, Maya. This is going to be, I want to say 2027 is when we should be over there. So it's one of those projects in our capital improvement plan. It's going to be both a drainage, sewer and water project. Now that we've got Boynton done, we've got a good system we can connect into with drainage in particular. So that is on the capital improvement plan. I can't remember for sure how far south that goes, Maya, but I think it goes to the railroad tracks. I don't think it goes any further south than that. But I'll see if I can't link that capital improvement plan here for you so you can see that as well. Okay, so this link, folks, will take you to our taxpayer transparency page of our website, and you'll be able to pull up the PDF of our most recent capital improvement plan. Keep in mind, this capital improvement plan is going to change in the next few months. Again, we try and update it every year with new financing possibilities and with new cost estimates, so on and so forth. So know that those numbers they're going to change, and it can impact how feasible this project is too. If prices are going to explode by 20%, that's going to change whether we can actually do this capital improvement plan as designed. So Josh asked, so what? Sorry. Not sure where that comment went, just a second. So what numbers are the city putting together and sacrificing for the next 30 years? Again, Josh, no matter what fund these infrastructure improvements come from, they're coming from taxpayers. Whether it's coming from the second penny fund in form of sales tax, or the general fund and property tax and sales tax, or the drainage fund, or whatever else it might be. The city isn't some independent business that's just going to have money it can offer up to offset the cost of a project. The city collects these dollars to make these improvements on the community's behalf. So I guess I don't know what. I'd be open to suggestions. I'll put it that way. I'll be open to suggestions for how to finance these projects differently. and certainly willing to put some math together if those are feasible options. If we owe 20 million as a collective, shouldn't the city at least have a plan to meet us halfway? Again, Josh, that's the money only comes from one place, but and it's whether it comes from the general fund or otherwise. So, Mitch, yes, the restaurant is going to be the senior center. That's still in the works? The city turned over that property to the Development Corporation this week. And hopefully March 1st is when they're going to take possession. So stay tuned. You should see some action there across the street relatively quickly here. Other questions? Amy asked, are there apartment buildings planned at this time for the Countryside Edition? Amy, there's properties or areas set aside for it, but as far as I know, there's no plans right now. We do get some fairly frequent interest in multifamily housing here, and it's actually one of our big shortages right now. So we've had some discussions on, are there things we can do to incentivize that? Right now there's nothing planned, but that's really up to the private market. If a builder decides that they want to come in and start doing this, we'd love for it to happen. But if you look on, if you go west of Sunshine there on Countryside Avenue, a lot of that stuff on the south side of that street is essentially set aside as potential apartments or some sort of multifamily housing. I don't know if that it would be actual, apartment complexes, for example, but it'd be something that's considered multifamily. And most of Countryside is zoned multifamily as well. So it's just not set up most of it is set up to house or platted in a way that would allow for large apartment complexes. Thanks, Josh. If you have more questions, feel free to chime in. Any other questions? Amy, if you're still on, it sounds like the sidewalk is still there by the water plant. So we'll figure out a way to get that opened up. My apologies. I thought that was closed off. So my guess is it snowed that big snow right after Sukup left with the demolition project, and it just got missed. So that's my guess. But we'll get over there and get that cleaned up one way or another. Thanks, Becky. Appreciate it. Other questions I can answer tonight. I asked where are we at with the ambulance district. At this point, we're waiting on Lincoln County to act. So we've asked them to pass a resolution. They've been there the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, it has not happened yet. Certainly some frustration on my part, but we're still confident it will happen. Once they pass that resolution, then the counties have to come together and set a date for the election, so people can vote on whether this is going to happen or not. So still got our fingers crossed. Everybody but Lincoln County has passed it at this point. So I'm hoping it's going to be on their agenda again next week and hopefully get some final resolution of this. Josh asked, did the assessment idea pass? Yes, Josh, it did. Give me a call. We can talk through what that means in the long run for this project. Chris asked, the old nursing home location, what's the plan there? Chris, as far as we know, Sanford wants to keep that for future development. So, at this point, we haven't heard anything. We'd certainly love to see, whether it's a large clinic or some other expansion there, some other healthcare facility there, we'd love to see it. We think it'd be a great addition to town. But at this point, we don't have any news. So they are keeping the property up. They're maintaining it, which is our primary concern in the short term. But at this point, nothing solid. Jim asked, where are the dogs? Jim, I had to send them upstairs. They were a bit rowdy tonight. If you log into the first minute, you might hear one of them howling even. So sorry, but they had to get out of here. They were a bit of a distraction tonight. Hang around long enough, you might hear them running around upstairs. Any other questions? All right, well, if not, we'll wrap it up for this month. We'll have another one next month. Of course, we're doing these every month. So, and then every other month we're doing it in person as well. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we hope to have a postcard out to everybody with the next date and time for our next in-person Q&A. So, and we're always looking for other ways to do this too, folks. So if there's other events or meetings we should hold, feel free to holler. There are towns that are doing some of these before and after council meetings. So an opportunity for people to come in, learn about what's going to be on the agenda, what the key issues are, so on and so forth. So, if there's something else that you'd like to see that we're working on engaging with the community on, pipe up. We're happy to consider everything and keep these conversations going. One thing you're going to see in the future, we hope at least, is a revamped website. Anybody that's been on our website knows that it can be a bit of a challenge to navigate. It's not the most modern. There are some challenges that come along with that. So we're trying to pair that up with a new app that we can help communicate important issues on as well. So, and then, as we come up into spring season or pothole season, as we often know it, we're hoping, fingers crossed, we're hoping to have a new 311 system up by then. So on this system, you could actually, if you see a pothole, you could, click on this link and that utility billing system. It's the same system you use to pay your utility bill and report an issue. This storm drain is clogged, or hey, we got a new pothole over at Third and Cedar that needs to be fixed. So, I haven't put a ton of work into getting that going yet this year. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. But my hope is that as we get into spring and summer, we'll have that system up and running and just have one more way for folks to communicate concerns or issues that they see. So thank you, everyone. As always, don't make yourself a stranger. If you got questions, feel free to call, text, email, whatever works for you. We'll see you next month.